In this episode, we look at federation and single sign-on, SSO, along with security assertion markup language, SAML, lightweight directory access protocol, LDAP, and open authorization, OAuth. These terms can sound technical at first, but the basic problem is easy to recognize. People need to access many systems, and organizations need a safer way to manage that access without forcing every application to maintain a completely separate username and password. Federation and SSO help solve that problem by letting trusted systems work together around identity. Instead of every application trying to prove who you are from scratch, one trusted identity service can authenticate you and help other services make access decisions. The main point is not memorizing deep protocol mechanics. The main point is understanding what each technology is commonly used for and why identity trust matters so much in modern security. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Author.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Federation means one organization, system, or identity provider trusts identity information from another trusted source. In practical terms, it allows a person to use an account from one identity system to access resources in another system. You may see this when a company account lets you sign into a cloud application, a partner portal, or a software platform that the company does not directly host. The receiving service does not simply trust anyone. It trusts a specific identity provider that has been configured ahead of time. This relationship is important because it reduces the need to create separate accounts everywhere. It also gives the organization more central control over authentication, access rules, and account removal. When federation is designed well, it helps people move between approved services while still keeping identity management anchored in a trusted place. SSO is the user-facing benefit that often comes from federated identity. With SSO, you authenticate once through a trusted identity provider and then access multiple approved applications without signing in separately to each one. This can make work easier because you do not have to remember a different password for every service. It can also improve security because the organization can enforce stronger authentication in one central place. For example, a company may require multi-factor authentication, MFA, during the main sign-in process, then allow access to several connected applications after that. SSO is not just about convenience. It helps reduce password reuse, simplifies account management, and gives security teams a clearer place to monitor sign-in activity. The identity provider is the system that authenticates the user and provides identity information to other services. The service provider is the application or system the user wants to access. In an SSO flow, the identity provider verifies the user, then sends information that helps the service provider decide whether access should be allowed. That information may include who the user is, what groups the user belongs to, what attributes apply to the user, and whether authentication succeeded. The service provider relies on the trust relationship rather than directly handling the user's password. This separation is valuable. Applications can focus on their business function, while the identity provider handles authentication and identity policy. The security risk is that the identity provider becomes very important. If it is misconfigured or compromised, many connected services may be affected. SAML is commonly used for federated authentication, especially in enterprise SSO between an identity provider and a service provider. At a high level, SAML allows an identity provider to send an assertion to a service provider. An assertion is a trusted statement about the user and the authentication event. It may say that the user successfully signed in, identify the user, and include attributes the application needs. The service provider reads that assertion and decides whether to grant access. You do not need to memorize the full message structure for Security Plus. What matters is the role SAML usually plays. It is a common way to let a corporate identity system provide SSO into outside applications, especially browser-based business applications. SAML depends on trust, configuration, and careful handling of the identity information being exchanged. If the identity provider and service provider do not agree on the right settings, sign-in can fail or access can be granted incorrectly. If the wrong attributes are sent, the application may not know what role the person should have. If the trust relationship is too broad, a user may reach systems that should have been separated. Security teams care about SAML because it can connect identity to many applications at once. A single sign-in process may open the door to email, collaboration tools, ticketing platforms, customer systems, or administrative portals. That is efficient, but it also means strong controls around the identity provider. MFA, certificate handling, logging, and access review are very important. LDAP is different from SAML because it is commonly used to query and manage directory information. A directory is a structured store of identity-related data, such as users, groups, devices, and organizational units. Many environments use directory services to keep track of accounts and group memberships. LDAP gives applications and systems a way to look up that information. For example, an application might use LDAP to check whether a username exists or whether a user belongs to a certain group. The key idea is that LDAP is strongly associated with directories and identity data lookup. It is not mainly the same kind of browser-based federation protocol as SAML. It supports identity infrastructure by helping systems find and use directory information. LDAP matters because directory information often drives access decisions. If a user is in a finance group, an application may allow access to finance reports. If a user is removed from an administrator group, administrative access should stop. If an account is disabled in the directory, connected systems may deny access. This makes directory accuracy very important. Old group memberships, stale accounts, and poorly managed directory objects can all become security problems. LDAP traffic also needs protection because identity lookups may involve sensitive information. In secure designs, organizations use encrypted versions or protected channels where appropriate, restrict which systems can query the directory, and monitor unusual lookup patterns. You do not need to become a directory engineer for this exam, but you should recognize that LDAP connects applications with identity data stored in directories. OAuth is commonly used for authorization, especially when one application needs permission to access something on behalf of a user without receiving the user's password. This is a slightly different problem from simply proving who the user is. Imagine a calendar application asking permission to read your contacts, or a reporting tool asking permission to access data from another cloud service. OAuth allows delegated access through tokens. A token is a digital object that represents permission for a certain kind of access. The application can use the token to perform allowed actions, but it does not need to know the user's actual password. This matters because sharing passwords between applications is risky. OAuth supports a safer model where permission can be limited, granted, and revoked. OAuth is often confused with authentication because people see it during sign-in experiences. The cleaner way to think about it is that OAuth is mainly about authorization and delegated access. It answers what an application is allowed to do, not just who the user is. In many modern environments, OAuth may appear alongside other identity technologies that add authentication information. For Security Plus, avoid getting stuck in deep protocol details. Focus on the common use case. OAuth helps one service access resources from another service with permission, usually through tokens and defined scopes. A scope describes the kind of access being requested, such as reading a profile, sending a message, or accessing a file. If scopes are too broad, the application may receive more access than it really needs. Tokens are central to modern federation and authorization because they carry claims, permissions, or proof that a trusted process occurred. A token may tell an application that authentication succeeded, that a user has certain attributes, or that an application has been granted certain access. Tokens are useful because they reduce the need to send passwords repeatedly. They are also risky if stolen, overpermissive, or allowed to last too long. A compromised token may let an attacker act as the user or application until the token expires or is revoked. This is why access tokens, refresh tokens, sessions, and related identity artifacts need careful protection. Strong identity security is not only about protecting passwords. It also includes protecting the objects that represent authenticated sessions and delegated permissions. Federation and SSO create security benefits, but they also concentrate risk. The benefit is central control. The organization can apply MFA, conditional access, account disablement, logging, and access policy from one identity platform instead of managing every application separately. The risk is that a problem in the central identity platform can affect many connected applications. If an attacker compromises a highly privileged identity account, they may move through multiple services more easily because trust is already established. If a federation trust is misconfigured, users may receive access they should not have. If an application accepts weak or outdated identity settings, it may become an easier target. This is why identity systems should be treated as critical security infrastructure, not just convenience tools. Logging and monitoring are essential for Federation and SSO because identity activity often tells the first part of a security story. Logs may show successful sign-ins, failed attempts, MFA challenges, new devices, risky locations, token use, consent grants, group changes, and administrative configuration changes. These records help security teams investigate suspicious access and understand whether a user, application, or token may have been misused. For example, if a user signs in from an unusual location and then grants broad access to an unfamiliar application, that combination may deserve attention. If an administrator changes a federation setting, that action should be recorded and reviewed. Centralized identity makes monitoring more powerful because many application access paths lead back to one place. That visibility is valuable only if the logs are collected, protected, and reviewed. Common misunderstandings can make this topic harder than it needs to be. SSO does not mean passwords disappear everywhere. It means access to multiple services can be based on one central authentication process. Federation does not mean blind trust. It means trust that has been deliberately configured between specific parties. SAML is commonly tied to enterprise SSO and assertions between identity providers and service providers. LDAP is commonly tied to directory queries and identity data. OAuth is commonly tied to delegated authorization through tokens and scopes. These technologies can work near each other, but they are not all the same thing. When you hear these names, connect each one to its practical purpose rather than trying to memorize every technical exchange behind the scenes. The main takeaway is that Federation and SSO help organizations manage identity across many systems without creating a separate island of accounts for every application. SSO gives you a smoother sign-in experience and gives the organization a central place to enforce stronger controls. Federation creates the trust relationship that allows identity information to move between approved systems. SAML commonly supports enterprise SSO by passing trusted assertions. LDAP commonly supports directory access by helping systems query identity and group information. OAuth commonly supports delegated authorization by allowing applications to access resources through limited tokens instead of shared passwords. These ideas matter because modern security depends heavily on identity. When identity trust is clear, monitored, and well-controlled, access becomes easier to manage and harder to abuse.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.